everyone, this is Tech Economy TV and I'm your host. You already know, as always, my name is Omoboide Adidakwa and the conversation is interesting today because this is one conversation I've always wanted to have. And over time we've had the conversation about fintechs, financial technology, money, and that's what Tech Economy is all about, the business side of things, the economy side of things, and particularly we talk about technology. So it's great to have you here. First of all, do not forget, as usual, to like, share, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, which is very important, and follow us across all our social media platforms today. My guest in the studio today on the podcast is someone that is super interesting. I mean, he just celebrated his 60th year birthday, and it's interesting because, I mean, if you double my age by 2, he's still not going to give you 60. But then again, we promise to make the conversation interesting. He's a fintech enthusiast and he's also a coach. So we're going to be learning a lot of things, and we're going to be learning a lot of things, like I said. So before we start the conversation, let's go on this short break. And when we're back, I'll introduce who I have in the studio. Alright, we're back from that. Like I said, do not forget to like, share, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. So today in the studio we have, like I said, a fintech expert, a consultant, a coach, and we have no other person than Dr. Babatunde Obrimah. I don't know if I pronounced that right.
Obrimah.
My apologies. Obrimah. And he's a lead consultant at LB Integrated Resources Limited. And how is that like for you, sir? Over the years in the fintech space, I mean, you're 60, you recently celebrated 60 years of age, and how's it been like? How long have you been in this industry, the fintech space?
So, with the Fintech Association, I've been there for 6 years. Well, but when you talk about the fintech space, what my interest in fintech, it's just basically the fact that I believe that technology can solve a whole lot of problems we have in Africa. Way back in 1989, when I did my master's in biotech, looking at in vitro culture of sorghum. How can we use genetic engineering to solve some of the problems that we have with production of sorghum in Nigeria, especially with a seed called striga. So that's, I'm telling you, way back at 1989. So my interest in technology and solving problems has been there. I mean, I ended up in banking and what have you. And so my interest in coming even to the Fintech Association was the fact that I saw an association that was going to be inclusive, because nobody wakes up in the morning and say, today I want to pay MasterCard.
Yes.
They don't sell anything. Or you want to pay Flutterwave. They don't sell anything. We'll pay for food, shelter, health, transport, and what have you. So those verticals, the agri-tech, the health tech, the prop tech, the trans tech, how do we also grow those spaces? Because that's really what people pay for. And how do we solve problems in those spaces using technology to do it? And I believe that, once we can get it right with technology in every aspect of our economy, we can transform this economy. There just must be the willpower, even the political willpower. How can we transform public sector to be completely digitalized, and things like that? So for me, that's my interest, and that's why I'm an enthusiast. I believe that I can see opportunities where we can use technology to solve problems in various aspects of our economy. As a matter of fact, all the SDGs of the United Nations, we can use technology to achieve milestones in them if we only if there's a willpower. There's always the problem in Nigeria is the political willpower to do a lot of things.
Yes, I agree with you, because sharing personal experiences. This year I've been to the hospital a couple of times. That's General Hospital, the federal government hospitals in Nigeria, and I see how a lot of times they still use the manual process of doing things. They're still writing. You still have to always collect cards, and a lot of very funny circumstances and situations. I'm like, technology can solve all this for you. It should not be this technical. So for you, what is financial inclusion in terms of in Nigeria? How well are we doing in terms of financial inclusion across all sectors in Nigeria?
Okay, financial inclusion basically is being able to provide financial services, various forms of financial services to people, both in the city and the rural areas. Although most of the time when you have financial inclusion, the focus is more on the rural areas. That's what it's supposed to be. How well are we doing? We were hoping to achieve 80% by 2020. We didn't do it. We're still at about 64, 68% now. So we're still a far cry away. Have we improved? Yes. Can we do better? Yes.
We can do better, and that I agree, because back in, if you ask people how many people have ATM cards, how many people know about some certain banking terminologies, is you be shocked. So how will you rate the level of financial inclusiveness or financial inclusion in rural areas or developing areas in Nigeria?
So, it's a discussion that's been here for quite a while. People say the rural areas. So my own belief is this: there's financial inclusiveness in the rural areas. There's no village in Nigeria that you're going to go to that you don't have one person who coordinates the financial system there. Is the guy is a thrift guy. He collects money from traders and people who want to contribute, and then he lends out to people who are doing small businesses within those communities, and it works. As a matter of fact, that's the guy they trust. They don't trust any other person. They don't trust the banks. They don't trust they don't trust fintech. They just like that guy and they're comfortable with him. At times, they don't even know where he stays, but they trust him. I mean, in days when cards were being used, people would contribute and give their cards, 50 cards to one person, because there's no bank around there. He's not going to travel to the next community or where there's an ATM to go and collect cash for everybody. He has everybody's PIN and they trust him.
Yeah.
So there's a system that works in those communities. And the issue is this: do we have to do financial inclusion the way it's done everywhere else? My answer is no. What works for us? If in those communities, trust is a function of people, how do we then bring in these thrift guys into the formal financial system and use them as the
Like as an
intermediary to onboard the other people, not necessarily onto banks, but onto him in a more, what's it called, digital format. In which case, so this guy becomes the agent, then he has sub ledgers under him where you can now aggregate all these people. Through him, you can have them some KYC done, so we can capture their data, using those people, that they trust. If any other person comes, they think you're up to
no good
up to
or
something.
bad things. Yeah.
So we need to find a way by which we can bring those guys into the system formally. Not just maybe it's going to be maybe even if CBN we have to create a kind of regulation that works for those group of
So
people.
I was going to respond to that, and I think some banks are actually doing that. I don't know for all banks. I can't speak for all banks, but I think some banks are actually doing that. I think it's called agents or merchant banking, where you see like small retail shops where you see like the sign poster or maybe a particular bank, and you now see I don't want to mention a bank, XYZ agents available here. So that's some form of will I say engagement with the rural communities, or you don't think that works?
Well, so I mean, I'll be very honest. How many rural communities have I been to? Very, very few. So I will really be able to speak to that. In terms of really, are they really onboarding, or they're just providing POS services? So we need to be able to separate, because what you hear more in the rural areas are all these POS guys who are able to provide cash for them, and what's it called? Of course, they get them to onboard in a way so that they can have cards. So that's the way they can get their cash. But even they get people to transfer cash to the POS so that they can give them cash even when they don't have anything. So it's to be able to really understand how that is working. Those guys, are they the people that they trust? And I'm still coming back to that. What's it called? Trust is for the rural community. Trust is a critical factor, because they've lost money in the past through People's Bank or community banks and other forms of things that have financial projects in the past that didn't work out. So they are not comfortable. They just want to be sure that their money is safe, and this is the guy they trust.
Yeah. Spot on question. Do you think that the Nigerian banks are lazy?
No, the banks are not lazy. So everybody's in business to make profit, including fintechs. So why should I go to a community where there's no power, there's no data? I mean, that means that I'm going to be funding my own power for data. If MTN or any of these telcos is not there, maybe I want to put Starlinks there. Those are costs. Why should I take that cost when I can sit in Lagos and make money? So, I mean, it's not, I don't think that it has nothing to do with laziness. It has to do with business. What's it called? You see, it's like when people say that lending to agriculture is poor. Yes. So the amount of time it takes you to process a loan for 200,000 naira is the amount of time it takes you to process a loan for 2 billion. So why should you spend time on 200,000 when you can do 2 billion? And that's the way the banks think, because at 200,000 it's not profitable to the bank. So, and that's the way it is. So we need to be able to, and so that's why in agriculture you're beginning to see aggregation, aggregators coming, putting farmers together so that they can go and borrow lump sum, which makes sense. So nobody is going to go to anywhere where it's not profitable to them.
Yeah, true, true. And you started highlighting some of the problems with financial inclusion in Nigeria. But what would you say is peculiar to Nigeria in terms of what is holding Nigeria back to have a circular, a vast level of financial inclusion? Is it the technology or is it the economy? What exactly would you say is specifically the problem?
I think it's more of a social cultural issue, if I want to put it that way. So most of the people that we're talking about are probably in the agrarian economy. And what are their pain points? They need um, produce, they need inputs for their agriculture, for their farms. They want to be, they want some safety. So take a farmer, if you ask him what are his fears, or a scorpion bite or a snake bite, right? Or a cutlass swinging and injuring someone. How do you get medical care? I mean, those are the things that probably is concerns. So if you go, I think that to achieve financial inclusion, it's not just about opening accounts, not just about financial service, it's about a total value chain concept, such that if you're going to a community, you're able to say, look, if you buy fertilizers, let's say if you're planting maize, you need 4 bags of fertilizer for an hectare of land. If you buy 4, because some people might not buy 4, they might just buy 2. So if you buy 4, you get free medical, for example. You get, if there's a snake bite or a scorpion bite, you understand? So you are giving them value. You see, everybody's looking for value. So what value are you bringing to them? So, and then when you do that, to be able to do that, you're now bringing that, to be able to do that, you have to do insurance for you. We have to open a bank account for you so that and then if you do that also, and you buy, what's it called, hybrid seeds, that's what's it called, we insure you against yield, not against your crops. So if you do everything right and your yield fails, the insurance will pay you on your expected income.
Yes.
So you're not losing anything. So you're taking to them a total value so they can see value. And then it makes sense for them to come into the financial space. Let me give you one. We did Anchor Borrower program. A lot of farmers registered. Now Anchor Borrower program has stopped, right?
Okay.
Those farmers opened accounts because they were getting credits and things like that. Now that it has stopped, what has happened to those accounts? I'm sure a lot of them will be dormant.
Yes.
That's not the concept you want to achieve financial inclusion. It must be sustainability. So sustainability is about what will work. How do you make it work? How do you bring this to look? If you follow this process and your harvest comes, we have an off-taker who will buy everything from you. So your income is guaranteed. So you're selling to them a complete value chain package. And I think that's what we need to do for different areas of the what's called, because that package might work in Southwest, or what's it called, might not work. It might work in the not work in the North. So what to work there are cultural issues. So we need to look at all of that. We can't just say because it's done in this part of the world, this is what the World Bank is saying, or somebody else is saying, or United Nations is saying we must do it that way. No, we must look at the peculiarities of our environment and how it works. What's it called? And we have regulations or policies in the country that even limit some things. For example, once you're above 65, your life pension, you can't be in a life pension. HMO becomes an issue. I know some insurance companies are trying to work around some of those. But you've cut people off above 65. My mom is 90. I don't think she has operated her account for the past 20 years or more. And when people want to give her money, she give them her account number. She's in Ughelli in Delta State, 600 kilometers or more away from here. And then she called me and said that I've asked somebody to put money in your account. And then the money comes in. And just keep it. And then a few months down the line, say, that money, can you send it to me? How am I supposed to send it to her? So I have to find a cousin who, what's it called, and send the money to him, who will go and withdraw cash and take to her. She still believes in her cash. Well, you see, at that age, what are their challenges? My dad is 92, it's health issues, what's it called. So if you go to them and you're selling a health package, she's likely to reconsider
opening an account,
reactivating her account or opening a new account or something, because you're coming to sell value. So that's what I'm saying. We must look at what works, demographic issues. So we've cut out a whole demographic and people are living longer when we've cut them off, from what's it called. So there are policy issues also that need to be addressed in some of this.
So from what I can hear innovation problems. From what you're saying, the Nigerian space has refused to be innovative. But one very innovative idea is the fact that there are a lot of fintechs now, and the fintech industry is something that is worth billions of naira and dollars. But would you say the fintechs have helped the commercial banks improve financial inclusion?
So, I think that, so let me correct that impression. There's a lot of innovation. They're just, like I said, environmental issues, policy issues that might limit the implementation of some of this innovation. For example, I think that what will work in the rural areas is biometric-based solutions. They don't have to think about a card number. They don't have to think about a PIN. They just need to use their biometrics, their fingers, and they can do transactions on the POS. And I know there's a fintech that's already coming with similar a solution like that. Those are things that, so we need to start. So there's a lot of innovation going on in the ecosystem. So I would not, have they helped banks? Of course. When you look at 5 years ago, digital platforms are only doing like 200 billion naira worth of transactions a year. Last year we did 1 quadrillion.
Wow, it's crazy.
So and this year likely to be better. As digital platforms become cheaper, more people will be onboarded onto it. I'm one of those who believe that cash should be levied heavily.
Yes.
If you want a cashless environment, then levy cash and make digital platforms cheap.
Yeah, I agree with you. And in terms of, you touched on various perspectives in which we can bridge that gap of financial inclusion. And one of the things you've not really mentioned is the point of trust. A lot of people would probably not trust that, okay, this person is probably going to cut away my money. How am I sure these are not scammers? So at what point do you think we can come in, or do you think fintechs or the proper banks can bridge that trust gap?
So I think bridging the trust gap is a gradual process. Start with the person they trust. And when they see that the person they trust is in the system, and the person they trust starts speaking well about the financial system, then you're likely to build more trust. I think that's the way it starts. And then I would say we must have a framework for those particular group of people, those thrift guys that they trust in those communities. You must have a framework that works, that brings them in, builds trust with them, and they go back and sell the trust.
I agree with you. That's very insightful. Very, very insightful. In terms of how I put it, in terms of the government policies, do you think the government is doing enough to bridge that gap, or the government is not doing enough? If you were to rate the government and its policies, the CBN over 10, what would be your rating, and why are you giving that particular rating?
That's a tricky question. So I mean, there is no perfect system, so nobody can get 10.
Yes.
In That's why it's called emerging technologies. Every day you're learning, something new happens. Something new happens. So I think that even in America, they don't have financial inclusion is just about they still have 20% financial
Gap.
gap. So it's not. So if they can be at 8, maybe we can give ourselves 5. At least we are trying.
That's average. That's average. That's average. In terms of USSD short codes, do you think that's a great idea? I know it worked at some point, but I know a lot of people are moving forward from that because of there are a lot of, let's call it, scams. Scams is really porous in terms of using USSD short codes and implementing that with financial inclusion in the rural areas. What's your take on that, and what do you have to say concerning that?
So, like I mentioned earlier, rural areas, biometric based solutions. Don't give them something too complex for them to, what's it called, star, that, ash, and what have you. Just once they're sure, and that will build trust. They know that nobody else can take my money except me.
My hand, yes.
So, I mean, and I think that that's what we should try and implement biometric based solutions for the rural areas. I think that will go a long way to build trust and ensure that their money is
Yes, safe.
safe. Yeah.
Safe. In terms of education and advocacy, how do you say the government can do better, the banks can do better, and in what do you suggest as an expert in the field that they can implement?
Okay, well, I mean, there has to be more awareness when it comes to financial inclusion. And I think that that's an area where we haven't done well. When you take e-Naira, one of the challenges was I think they wouldn't have enough uh, awareness. The QR code, they say, not enough awareness. Um, so it's something that we need to, what's it called? Looked at. I mean, I was on channels, was it 2 weeks ago, and we're talking about contactless payments, and I said the challenge is the awareness is not there, and are the consumers ready for it? Consumers, you might have a fantastic product, but the consumers themselves are not ready for it because they don't know about it.
Yes.
They are afraid that their money will get lost. So how do you create confidence? Is to create that awareness. So I think awareness is extremely, extremely important. I mean, financial literacy, the benefits, but more importantly, value. I keep saying it, value, value. So because I have some bit of agricultural background, value. Once we can create value for the people, they will come onto the system. They will trust more this because they can see the system giving some value back to them.
Yeah, value is very important, and I agree with you because for everything one must see a need, and a need must be met, and that is creating value. And so, my final question before I wrap up, the entire space, entire, I don't want to call it the hemisphere in Nigeria as regards financial inclusion. What are those key takeaways, or what are those key innovations that you want to be seeing going forward?
So let me just speak. I think that one of the things that we need to start seeing is the fact that money is not the way it used to be. I mean, the future of money is going to be the interplay of fiat, CBDCs, stable coins, and digital assets or cryptos. Now, let me take an interesting one. remittances, diaspora remittances. I think the regulators see it as cash, dollars coming in.
Yes.
But it's no longer dollars, it's dollars and digital assets. So if we're going to increase diaspora remittances, and where the people get those remittances, the more they put in the rural areas. So are we going to bring in digital assets to why can IMTOs now begin to accept bitcoins and stable coins, right?
Yes.
But they are regulated by SEC, and their IMTOs are regulated by CBN. Digital asset exchanges, exchanges are regulated by SEC. So why can we say that IMTOs, you can take cryptos, you can take stable coins, but you can't hold them. You must have an account with the registered exchanges, and you can only hold them best T+1 or T+2, depending on what you agree. They must be offloaded, and then you now pay the beneficiaries naira. To pay the beneficiary, they must open an account. Because a lot of money is coming in through digital assets. So how do we trap them? So if we do that, it's called that diaspora remittances will jump off from what have you, from $20 billion we're talking about, maybe to like 40 or even more. So it's how the way the technology is going now. It's cutting across regulators. So there has to be interoperability amongst regulators, and that will see the value, the potentials, and we work together to lock it in. So there are we need to a lot of innovation needs to come up. You need to work together, regulators also, to be able to make sure that you can take advantage of all these opportunities. A lot of people in the villages, the children are sending them money, and they're sending them through Bitcoin.
I think it was last month or 2 months ago. They announced the Nigerian stable coin. Yeah, I think NGN.
CNGN.
CNGN, sorry. Do you think that has perspectives? Because a lot of people, I heard a lot of commentary and say, oh, look at the e-Naira, they mess it up. Now CNGN, there's really nothing that would come out of it. So should we be positive about this?
So CNGN is private sector. There are some fintechs, and I think some banks are involved in the CNGN. What's it called? So it's private sector driven. Like I said, the future of money is the interplay. There are a lot of things. There are issues with e-Naira, like I said, awareness. There's also what I call what's it called? There's some conflict between monetary policy initiatives and the ideology of the fiscal policy operators. Take e-Naira, for example. If all ministries, all government parastatals had adopted e-Naira, if you want to pay for JAM, pay for WAEC, pay your tax, pay this, everything must be by e-Naira. E-Naira will have been successful, really. So where there is no political will to support what the CBN is doing, you're going to have those challenges. Was e-Naira. There were operational issues with the e-Naira. It was like CBN going into retail, money leaving commercial banks to banks. So the banks too are very reluctant about pushing it. There were also operational issues. You go to download an app for e-Naira, then you go back to your bank app. It wasn't necessary. Everything should have been sitting on my bank, where on my bank I can just access e-Naira and do everything that I need to do from my bank app rather than going to another app. I guess those things will be dealt with. So, and I've never seen a startup that got it right the first time. Regulators are also startups in this space. So everybody is learning. And that's so for me, I don't think that e-Naira was a learning curve, for everyone. And I think that we can go back to the drawing board and do it better. Government, there's too much bureaucracy. There's too much. There are people who may want to make sure that it doesn't work because they benefit from the chaos, within the public sector. So let's public sector just focus on policy and regulation, and let private sector drive initiatives.
Thank you so much, Doctor. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much. It was a lot of wisdom dished in, and I for one hope that people in the financial space, in the financial sector, will actually watch this podcast and tap from your wealth of knowledge. So if people want to reach out to you, how can they reach out to you, connect with you, and contact you? And if you provide opportunities for probably mentorship or maybe conversations, how can they reach out to you, sir?
Okay, they can reach out to me through my LinkedIn profile. They can reach out to me through info@gmail.com.
Okay, so we'll just get that and scroll it on the
Yeah.
screen. Thank you so much, Dr. Babatunde, lead consultant, LB Integrated Resources Limited. It was a great time having you. Till next time, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe as always. This is still Dapo from Tech Economy. We give you more juicy podcasts and episodes going forward. Thank you. Till next time. Bye bye.